Okay, so let's take a look at, I pulled out 3 procedures. Let's take a look at them, see what was good and what was not so good. Remember, these are not for your experiment, and they're actually all for different experiments. Okay, so the first thing, when I see your procedure or method, I expect to see it in numbered steps. So you can see these other 2 have numbered steps. This student didn't. He did this thing where he said, in my first experiment. You do not want to do this. Don't waste your time on any of this. This is, all of this. This should all be numbered steps. Like, don't do that. I would avoid using I. Just say what you did. You don't need to say I did this. Just say change this. So often the best way to write a method is to start with the verb. Change the pollution level to 20%. Okay? Now, in this particular case, he didn't talk about how he did that. It was a simulation. There's not a lot to add, but I pulled this because I don't think it's a very clear method, and it would be maybe a little hard to follow. So in each experiment, I let the time go to 100 ticks. You need a unit. In this case, the unit is ticks, but maybe I let the time go. That doesn't explain what this looked like. He didn't talk about how he set it up, any of those things. He's describing here control variables, which don't belong necessarily like this in the method. You should include control variables in the method, but not as a list like this. You really need to be a little more descriptive in your method. Okay, let's take a look at the second one. Okay, so first of all, I like that she's including tools, so things like with a potato peeler. Fantastic. I like that she's numbered her steps. That's really good. She has some uncertainties, which is wonderful. And she has actual sizes, which is great. And she has uncertainties throughout, which is great. I do want to mention that it's not weigh, it's mass. She's telling us the piece of equipment she's using. I really like that. She's telling us how much of things, how long she's doing it. See, this in his was listed as a controlled variable kind of. Here she's included in the method, which is a better idea. Okay, I actually think this is a great method. I like that she says repeat steps 3 through 10 using these other concentrations. She lists them, which is wonderful. And she's telling us that she's repeating it. The only thing I'd say is she's not telling us how many times she repeated it. So it would be better if it was like repeat 5 more times with these concentrations. But overall, it's pretty good. Okay, let's take a look at this last one. So first of all, this person included safety concerns. Now, you don't have to do ethical and environmental. That was for a diploma biology class. You don't have to do that. But you should include a safety comment. So here, they tell us specifically what safety equipment they need to use and why. Okay, so again, it's numbered. She has included uncertainties mostly. She's telling us 90 mils of water, each, I think we're missing a word here, to each 90 mils sucrose solution. So she's telling us the amounts. She's not telling us how to make the concentrations, which you can tell us. You don't have to, though. And then she says approximately, which I don't love. It should be an actual amount with an uncertainty. Okay, so overall, do you see how she says repeat steps 4 more times? I think that's wonderful. Very nice and clear. She's missing a couple uncertainties, but overall, she did a really good job. I like that she's telling us how to clean up. Okay, so this is a nice, clear method. This one up here at the top is what you want to avoid. Okay?
Well, I drunk it and then I had to turn away.
Okay, let's take a look at some tables. So this is the first table I've pulled out for you, and just a reminder, these are not your labs, right? So a couple of things. Right now, this table, it does not have a title. Raw data is not a title. So it should be something more like table 1, and then it should include the independent and dependent variables. So percent pollution versus, I actually have no idea what this is versus because it doesn't tell me. So that's kind of a problem. So it needs to have some sort of independent or dependent variable. So here's your independent variable, and whatever your dependent variable is should go there. Okay, something that is really good though, I like that they have included the unit only in the heading right there. Okay, so tables should include a title and then headings. Okay, so far, there's some things that are okay. Let's take a look at something else that's not quite right. I'm going to erase this, if I can. Maybe it won't let me. Oh, it will. Okay. Okay, so one thing that this is missing is it's missing a heading for all of these. These should have a heading. So the heading should include anything that you're repeating. So ticks, which is the unit of time they used here. So I think this is the number of, let's say, black moths. The number of black moths, and at 0 and 100 ticks. That's what I would put. Actually, let's erase these. You don't need this. So that tells you what these data points are, because right now I don't know what they are. Okay, so there's some problems with it. It's okay. It's not great. Okay, let's look at the next one.
I too am cursed with knowledge.
Okay, so here's the second one. This one has a table title. It's been numbered, which is great. So mass of fusilli pasta before and after 2 minutes in different salinized water. So this is totally fine. We have an independent variable, and then we have our dependent variable, which is this. I also like that they're telling us something that was controlled, which was 2 minutes. They also have uncertainty right here, which is really nice, and they have the units. So one thing that they do that they don't need to do is they repeat some of this information. You're really trying to avoid repeating stuff, so like this, I would avoid that. Because it's in, oh, you know what? I was thinking this is the heading. This is the title. Oh, they do need that then. Because you need a heading underneath the title. They've kind of organized it to make it look like it's the heading, but it's not. Okay, so here, let's see. This looks pretty good. We have a nice title, or a nice heading with uncertainty and the unit, which is great. We have all of our initial values, and we have our final values, which are super clear. They all have decimal places that match. You got to watch out for things like this. You're sticking with the same punctuation for your numbers all the way across. So in this school, it was periods. The one thing I would say, they have two things highlighted here. One stayed 9 seconds too many, and one stayed 3 seconds too many. I would have them redo that instead of marking it this way. They should just fix it. Otherwise, this is pretty well organized. You can organize your data initial and final, or you can do it like this, where it's initial and final next to each other. They're both fine. Okay, let's look at the last one. This was the best one, pretty much. So I like that it's numbered again. Okay, we have the initial and final mass of dialysis tubing. So that's our dependent variable.
That's all, folks.
Okay, and then we have different sucrose concentrations. That's our independent variable. And then they have a couple of controlled variables. So they have 100 ml beaker, and they have the time. Really good. Okay, so we have our dependent variable along the top with an uncertainty and a unit. And then over here, we have our independent variable. The heading includes the unit. Each cell does not include the unit. The other thing is you can see that they all have the same amount of decimal places because they were measured using the same tools. Anything else I want to say about this?
Okay, I'm gonna go out.
I think it's pretty good. And then they would have a second table that has processed data. So they have one that's raw and one that's processed. That's it. Okay, let's take a look at some research questions so you have a better idea of what you should be looking for in your research question. So I've pulled out some research questions from previous labs. Just to be clear, these are not about the same experiment that you've done, but we're going to talk about the components of a research question that make it good. Okay, so this first one, how does pollution level affect dark peppered moths, keeping the time, total number of moths at the start, and type of moth consistent? Okay, so some things I like the fact that we have an independent variable that's pretty clear. It's pollution levels. That's great. And then they talk a lot about the different kinds of controls they have. I'm not sure, they kind of went overboard with that a little bit. But they have this thing that says affect, right? Affect the dark peppered moths. This is an unclear dependent variable. Okay? I happen to know what this experiment was about. It was about a rate, and affect is not specific enough when it comes to your research question. Okay, let's take a look at the next one. So how does lactase enzyme concentration affect the sweetness of milk? Okay, so there's some really good things here. Number one, again, it seems very clear what the independent variable was. They listed them, which you can do if you want. Although I do want to point out something. An amount, which is grams, is not a concentration. So that's a problem with this. And then it says affect the sweetness of milk. So again, we're going for this affect. Sweetness of milk. So this is not a clear dependent variable because I don't know how they're going to measure it. If they had followed it up with a second sentence saying how they're going to measure it, then I think it probably would have been okay. Okay, let's take a look at this one. How do the different pollution levels affect the dark colored peppered moth's percentage change? Okay, so number one, let's see. We got an independent variable, different pollution levels. Okay, and in this experiment, that's really all they could say. And then affect the dark colored peppered moth's percent change. Okay, so that's a more clear dependent variable. I think the only thing I would say to make this better is to give me a time frame. In this example, a time frame would help make this a little bit more specific, but they have the second they have two sentences afterwards, which is totally okay, and they're giving us a little bit more information. So they're using a simulation, which is fine, and then different simulated blah, 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 100 ticks, which is a time frame in this. So this is a great research question. I like how it's very clear what the independent and dependent variable is. I like that it's clear how they're going to be determining this. They're using a simulation right here. Let me just erase that for a second. I meant to use the highlighter. So I like that they're using this simulation. I like that they're giving us a time frame. They're making this very nice and specific. Okay, how does different concentrations of hydrogen peroxide, there's your independent variable, affect the rate? Ooh, there's our switch colors. I'm trying to stay at least somewhat consistent. Okay, so this is pink. Okay, and then affect the rate of catalase reaction. So there's your dependent variable. And I like that they're being nice and specific. They're telling us the specific organisms they're looking at, and they're looking at the time frame of 1 minute. Okay, and then they give us a little bit more information, the piece of equipment they're using, even the formula that they're going to use. That's very nice and specific. So while this research question it's not the worst research question, it's also not a great research question. These are much better, more specific research questions. Okay, thank you. Okay, so let's go over we're going to look at 2 different materials lists and look at what some good things and some bad things. Again, these are not from the same experiment that you're doing. Okay, so they're in a nice list, which I really like. They have some information that's very helpful. So they tell us amounts. Let's see, here's amounts. All of those things are really good. So your materials list should tell us the amount. Now, they didn't do that through the whole thing. There's a couple of places like string. They didn't tell us how much string they need. They didn't tell us how much distilled water they need. They didn't tell us how much of this stuff called dialysis membrane. They didn't tell us all of the amounts, only some of them. They did tell us some sizes. So this was a size. Right here, there's a size. Here's some sizes of things. Sizes. So amounts, let's write this down. Amounts, sizes. Okay, you'll see that they gave us some concentrations. Oops, I used the wrong pen. They gave us some nice concentrations right here, which is great, right? So concentrations, that's a useful thing to have. Okay, they gave us some uncertainties. Whether they're correct or not is a different matter, but they did give us some. So here is an uncertainty. Here's one. Here's one. So the thing is, some of them are not correct. So like this is not an uncertainty of a beaker. Percentage is not going to be an uncertainty of a beaker. The other ones look okay, maybe. I don't have them in front of me, so it's hard to know. But we're missing one. Like timer needs an uncertainty. But I do like that they've listed some of those things. So uncertainty. Those should be in your materials. Okay, let's take a look at one other one. So this is for a different experiment. Okay, and I cut off part of it. So you see these little superscripts? I cut those off, so ignore those. Okay, so let's see what they have. They have amounts, which is great. Amounts. There you go. Do you see how they tell us specifically how much water we need? So I really like that. They have amounts. So it's very nice and specific. Even for these, it's telling us. They tell us the uncertainties. I do prefer when the uncertainties are in parentheses like that. I think it makes it a little clearer. Okay, and this one should be 0.5 uncertainty. Okay, they give us the concentrations right here, which is fantastic. They give us all of that. The only thing I see that's not quite right is they didn't tell us the size of the pipette, which does have a size. Other than that, it looks pretty good. Okay, so when you are making your materials list, remember to include these things: amount, sizes, concentrations, and uncertainties. Okay.